How's it going, folks? CR here, and as I said before, I want to continue on the discussion, and I'm doing it based on the comments I see in the comment section, guys. So there's something in the topics I've discussed or in the video I've discussed, please feel free to leave the comments. On the last video, Chick Micken was the only one so far that's left a comment. So with that being said, I'm going to respond to Chick Micken and on his comment. Let's start off with JoJo and the Libertarians. I said JoJo has a great platform. I didn't say perfect. It is a great platform. There are certain things in there that are really bad. As you pointed out, open borders and amnesty for illegals. There's a reason why nations have borders. There's actually several reasons, and one of the reasons why is that different nations have different laws, different legal systems, different customs, different cultures, and you need borders to say where one jurisdiction ends and one jurisdiction begins. Furthermore, there are certain cultures that will absolutely clash with other cultures, and yes, those cultures do need to be separated. You have culture A and culture B, they're at odds with each other. Borders are a great way of saying, okay, here's your area, here's your area. You know what happens when you go into the opposing culture's area. There you have it. That's one of the many reasons why we have borders. A global open border system will be disastrous, but JoJo's system, I'm vehemently opposed to unilaterally opening up U.S. borders. We have too many people here. We have a lot of people who have no business coming here. And all this is going to do is encourage all the people from the countries where life sucks to come to the U.S. as opposed to do what it takes to fix their country. And quite frankly, many of these people don't want to do what it takes to fix their own country. Not only that, but will come to the U.S. and then continue to engage in those behaviors and support those very policies that destroyed their own country to begin with, or made their own country a lot worse to begin with. So, on that one, I fully agree that we should not have open borders. I don't think race has much of a leg to stand on this one, by the way, either. Over a decade ago, I got into an argument online with somebody from the UK, for example. This is on our gun laws. And this person had the audacity to tell me that America should have more restrictive gun laws because they come to the U.S. for holidays, and they, every time they do, shouldn't have to fear getting shot. And thus, we were somehow obligated to make our gun laws more restrictive for that particular person. Well, that particular person, I don't want that person in the U.S. That person should stay their ass in the UK. On the inverse side, let's say for one reason or another I decided to go to Canada and I came carrying this. If I got caught with this, I'd be arrested, tried, convicted, and sentenced to prison. First off, you're not allowed to carry a pistol on you in Canada without, authorization to carry, and those are incredibly restrictive. Plus, this pistol is prohibited in Canada. The barrel's too short. Plus, top that off, I don't have any license to own any firearm in Canada from the Canadian government, which is, one of the reasons why I choose not to go there. And the thing is, Chick, this is all white people doing it. So, I'm subjected to their laws. Well, guess what? They should have to abide by my laws, or I should say U.S. laws when they come here. you know. And I think if you can't do that, you shouldn't be going to another country. Period. You know. So on that one, I also disagree with her free trade policy on her platform. I don't think we should just unilaterally get rid of our restrictions or our tariffs, stuff like that. It's not really free trade if you got one country that's put all these trade restrictions on another country and the other country hasn't. Now, if both countries were to lift trade restrictions and tariffs and so on and so forth, yeah, then you would actually have free trade. But you see, free trade is like tango. It takes two to do it. All right, but what I do like about her platform, plan for Social Security reform, is one such example. You see, I don't think the government should have ever taken responsibility or charge for all or some portion of somebody's retirement. However, that is what it is now, and you can't exactly tell somebody in their 70s and 80s who've put in their whole entire working life into Social Security that we're taking all that away from you now, that you can't work anymore. And even though you put in that system your whole life, we're still taking it away from you. There needs to be some sort of reform. There needs to be a chance for those who don't want to rely on the government for their retirement to be able to opt out of that, and also, be able to take care of the people who unfortunately have gone down that route and can't change. So I like what JoJo has to say about that. Foreign policy. Well, you know what? I'll get into that a little bit after government spending. Government spending. JoJo wants to reduce government spending. I like that. Our government has our federal government's gotten way too bloated, and it needs to be reduced. We're spending money on things we shouldn't be spending money on, and we've got too many bureaucracies out there and government agencies out there that really shouldn't exist, that are eating up our resources and costing us more money in taxes. We also have a major deficit. So in order to address that deficit, we've got to reduce federal spending. Just plain and simple. Criminal justice reform. I don't agree, with every portion of what libertarians in general say about criminal justice and stuff like that. But one of the key things I do agree with libertarians on, what makes me a libertarian on, is I don't think victimless crimes should be considered crimes. I think we should end our war on drugs. That was a complete disaster. We've got decades of data to show this is a complete disaster. I think we should get rid of all, if not most, of our gun laws. They're unconstitutional, and they are victimless crimes, and then they often result in a lot of trouble and headache. And just trying to enforce some of these gun laws, you end up really quickly ending up with a casualty to where you didn't have to have it. The same way with our war on drugs. We'd also save a lot of money not imprisoning people just because they smoked a joint, or just because they had a bunch of marijuana, or just because they did a line of coke or something like that. I'd rather us focus on real crimes. And I think the way to get us focusing on real crimes again is to stop going after non-crimes. So that's why I think we need to get rid of some of these laws against non-crimes and start focusing on genuine crimes. Now, on to peace and neutrality. I love this plan. Basically JoJo says that she wants to end foreign wars. She wants to end military aid she wants to end foreign aid and wants to bring our troops to the U.S. and have them focused solely on defending the U.S. from foreign invaders, defending our shores. She also believes that an armed citizenry can augment that. I love that idea. For a number of reasons, it'll save us on spending and a lot of other things. Yeah, it definitely cut our spending down quite a bit. One. Two, what else it'll, I mean, and I know this is a downside, that, we won't have the same reach we did or the same capability we do for exerting influence on the other side of the world. But then two, you'll have other countries that are sitting there saying, oh, America's so bad. America's going around imposing its will on the world. Would have to shut up. All those countries that are saying that we are just using our military to push the rest of the world around would have to shut up then and there. But you know what else this is going to do? This is going to get a lot of these other countries, whether they're complaining about us, to have to really think, or I should say rethink, their own national policies. This is a little off topic, but this is going to be the biggest slap in the face to universal health care that you could ever see. All these European countries that have all these wonderful universal health care programs are now going to actually have to budget for an army strong enough to defend their borders. They're going to actually have to think how they're going to have a national defense policy that's going to be sufficient to defend their borders. And a lot of these other countries don't have armies for anything but a show, or to basically pretend that they're able to defend their own borders. Yeah, that's just plain and simple. So while I don't know what a lot of these countries will do, should the U.S. take a more JoJo stance on peace and neutrality and our military policy in general, I know what they're going to be doing in private, at least. They're going to be sweating beads in private. They're going to be sending envoys to meet with U.S. officials and, to beg us to reconsider that option. And, man, they're really going to have a hard time with that. I mean, I don't know how they're going to break the news to their citizens that they're going to need to do something. And I think that will be absolutely hilarious. I guarantee you will have even Sweden sending people to meet with U.S. officials at secret and bare minimum, to beg us to reconsider this policy. And it will be so funny, so glorious, it's not even imaginable. But moving on, I see you brought up JoJo's woke statements. Well, I said in the previous video I didn't like it. In fact, I think I absolutely hated it, is what I said, that JoJo meant a need of Black Lives Matter. And she got a lot of pushback from that, by the way. But, yeah, I disagree with libertarians that want to pander to some of the authoritarians just to pretend like they're woke too, But hey, what can you do? I mean, but I'm going to keep this in mind here, because what you suggested with the party system, that neither the Republicans, Democrats, or Libertarians really care about the American people, you put your own suggestion in there. the NJP. Well, I actually pulled up their website. I'm getting this from the horse's mouth. So, they don't have an issue section. They don't really have a developed platform yet. I'll be fair with them on this one that they just formed August 15th, 2020, according to their own page. So, I mean, I can give them a little bit of time to develop a platform, but just reading the About Us, I mean, how is this any different than Black Lives Matter? You know, they're talking about white civil rights, white this, white that, anti-white propaganda, you know. They don't exactly say what they're precisely what they want to do, and again, I'll give them a little bit of time to form a platform, you know, but from right now on the About Us, it seems like a giant appeal to the well-being and security, and you know, support us because we're in favor of your well-being and security. I'm immediately distrustful of any group that says this. You know, it's period. You know, and they do advocate for some good things. I mean, they advocated justice for the bartender who defended himself, or the bar owner that defended himself, and then got charged wrongfully because the prosecutor was too spineless to stand up to a mob. I mean, I agree that, you know, yeah, you know, the prosecutor should face charges for that, and people should not be caving to that mob. And I agree that that Antifa dude should have been charged, you know, should have been arrested and charged too, but, you know, when the police did try to arrest that Antifa dude that murdered a Trump supporter in cold blood, well, he got shot by the police. So, I mean, right now, that one is a moot point. But, you know, just, you look at the About Us on this NJP. I mean, how are what they advocating any different than, you know, how is their face value message any different than Black Lives Matter's face value message? They're picking a race, Black Lives Matter is picking a race. You know? And you're saying that they're standing up for Americans? Dude, well, what about my relatives who have mixed race? I mean, they're not pure white. They're only partially white, but, you know, are they now no longer Americans? Are they even people? What about the millions of non-white Americans who have been here, had families here for generations, and they are just as American as you or I? What about them? Do they not count? Dude, really? I mean, and I cannot harken on this enough. I mean, you're trusting people who are making an appeal to your well-being and security. You're trusting that appeal to them you're supporting them, you know, based on that appeal. That is not the mentality our founders supported, dude. Benjamin Franklin, those who would trade essential liberty for security, get neither. Now, I know this is not precisely what he says, it's paraphrased, but you see the picture. I got to take a break for 2 seconds, and I'm going to get into the second part, man. All right, so I ended the last segment with a quote from one of our founders, and I'm going to start the Civil War segment off by discussing what our founders actually wanted. Chicky said our founders wanted Civil War to happen more often. Well, everybody knows the quote from Thomas Jefferson: "The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the bloods of patriots and tyrants." With another quote from Thomas Jefferson, I guess it isn't quite so popular, is one loves to possess arms, and they hope to never have the occasion to use them. Yeah, our founders, while varied in their degree of how often, some sort of civil war would have to be engaged in order to preserve liberty, while they disagreed with the number of times it might happen or how often it might have to happen, none of them actually wanted it to happen. They viewed it as one of those things that would necessarily have to happen, but they dreaded it all the same. Now you look at our war for independence. Our founders spent decades trying every means they could to resolve their issues with the British government peacefully before it came to that. There you have it. It wasn't like they were itching to get into a civil war. And I know a lot of people like to bring up the Boston Massacre. Well, one of our founders defended the British officers who fired onto that mob. So, yeah, our founders were not eager just to use violence willy-nilly. And our founders, in fact, were not happy with the riots or the mob violence that actually set them back. So with that being said, yeah, it's like I mentioned about concealed carry. Yeah, I carry concealed. I am prepared to deal with a situation to where I need to use lethal force to protect my lives or the lives of those around me. I'm not eager for it to happen. In fact, I don't want that situation to ever come up. You understand what I'm talking about? You've said that civil war is in our blood. Well, I don't think it, being a soldier's just specifically in your blood. You might be physically capable of being a warfighter. You might have that warfighting spirit naturally, or you might have a culture that has that fighting spirit, but it takes more than just that fighting spirit. That's only one aspect of it. And when you talk about Anglos have been fighting their kings for over 1,000 years. Well, it's funny because I look at the European countries now, and it don't look like they have that same fighting spirit they used to have. Just saying that, But, so we already had 2 civil wars, the Revolutionary being the first. Obviously you're talking about the 1860 Civil War being the second. Actually, in that regard, we've had 3, and I understand that you don't know or probably haven't heard of the third one. But if y'all are curious about it, Google the America's Shortest War. Look up that. So, with that being said, yeah, we've had a war for independence, a civil war, and the battle for Van Sant County. Doesn't mean that those things are good, that we should be wanting these things to happen. It doesn't make you prepared for these things. either. You know, let me ask you, are you aware of the concept of a hybrid threat? I mean, you know, if you don't understand what a hybrid threat is, well, doctrinally speaking, when you're taking into consideration hybrid threat, you're taking into consideration state actors, non-state partisans, and the criminal element. Now, if you're taken back on why you need to consider these things, you are in no way, shape, or form prepared for a civil war. I'm just going to tell you that much right now. You know, do you have any idea of who your friends are going to be in this conflict, who your foes are going to be in this conflict? Do you and your friends have an idea of what you're going to do to sustain and ultimately be victorious in this conflict? Do you have any idea what your objectives are? Well, if not, you're definitely not prepared. I mean, and you have people, I presume, in your opposition that are pushing for a civil war too, and they're doing everything they can to get this thing destabilized. Well, it doesn't take a very large portion of the population to destabilize a region or a nation. It takes a lot more, however, to then get that region stabilized again and have a legitimate government set up. You know? And again, as I say, Civil War today isn't going to be like a Civil War like we saw in our War for Independence. It's not going to be like a Civil War like we saw, the 1860s. You know, this is going to be a much different Civil War from what I'm looking at. And again, as I say, in no circumstance do I want it. You know, should this Civil War actually happen. You know, and if you understand warfare, you don't want it to happen either. But, alas, you think I'm being a dickhead with this? Well, you're really going to find out that war in and of itself is a lot harsher than any words I can throw at you. But, since you think that you are ready, let me ask you this question. Civil War has kicked off. You and your cell have got a target that the opposition has out there in the HVT. And this HVT is going to make a huge difference in your enemy's strength going forward. Well, you guys are staging, you guys are getting ready for your attack on this HVT. You get a phone call. It's your wife. She is screaming. She is barely coherent. And what she's saying, she's in an absolute state of distress. Your kids are screaming in the background. They are very distressed. You have never heard anything like this before in your life. And apparently some of your opposition found out where they were and they're coming for them. And you got a good idea what that might happen to them, when your opposition gets a hold of them, because about a month or two ago, the bodies of one of your buddies' family was strung out on the roof of their house. your wife screaming and pleading with you, please get back here, please help me. And your cell leader says, I'm sorry for your family, but if we go and protect them, we lose our shot. I can't let you go, man, I'm sorry. We need all hands available for this. We need all the boots on the ground we can get. What choice do you make at that point? Yeah. And by the way, if you think this is something that is just far-fetched, look at civil wars in other countries. Yeah, atrocities like this happen, dude. Look at your opposition, even here. I mean, or at least people I presume to be your opposition. I mean, some of these people bring their small children out to riots and then bitch and complain when their small children are getting tear gassed or getting maced. And yet they still bring their small children out to these riots. They have that little regard for the safety and well-being of their own children. What type of safety and well-being, their regard for safety and well-being, what type of regard are they going to have for the safety and well-being of your children, your wife, your kids, the wife of this white supremacist Nazi? They're not. So, take that as it will. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. Yeah, I don't think you understand the gravity of this situation. And I'm not saying that this is definitely going to happen. I'm not clairvoyant. I can't tell the entire future. But it is a possibility that can happen. All right. So take that as food for thought. Guys, thanks for watching. Y'all take her easy out there and have a great day.